Hey there friend, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about how I am able to work so much and still prevent burnout. How's anybody able to do this? You know, I feel like sometimes as a burnout coach, I'm supposed to be the poster child for, 4-day work weeks and, not really working that much. But I actually really don't believe that burnout has anything to do with how much you work. It can. Work overload can absolutely be a thing. But when you're working a lot and you're doing it by choice, or you're doing it because you have multiple different passions and things that you're working toward, that actually can help prevent burnout. I find that there's sometimes instances where people work less than somebody else and they are experiencing burnout as opposed to, somebody else who works more. And there are reasons for that. This whole video and this whole idea actually was spurred by a conversation that I had with a client of mine earlier this week. And it led me to do some self-reflection and some brainstorming about why am I able to work as much as I do and not burn out in the process. So that's really what I want to share with you today. To give you some context for how much I do work, as I've already mentioned here, I've got a full-time job at an education company. And though it is kind of an odd job in the sense of how many hours a week it is normal for me to work, it is definitely very mentally and emotionally draining work. During my lightest seasons, I may be working 20 hours a week, but during my heaviest seasons, I'm usually working 30 to 35 hours a week. So not quite a full-time job, but the reason for that, and actually why I never push beyond that amount of work, is because of how mentally draining and emotionally draining it is. So I've got that, and then I have my business. And the business side of my life, I'm probably working 20 to 30 hours a week in my business, and I'm doing anywhere from private one-on-one coaching to doing things for my members, to creating Notion templates, to content creation, to, what else? Client speaking. Sometimes I'm being flown across the country for speaking. I actually just booked a new speaking engagement in October in Philly for a women's summit. So that kind of is the extent to which I'm working. You can kind of see when I talk about that, it adds up. I actually looked back at my time tracker and I kind of sucked at tracking my time in May and June, but when I looked back at April and March and even February, I was working, when I break it down, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, sometimes more than that. I actually logged more hours in February than I did in March, which is a shorter month. But I'm working and I'm logging vastly more hours than I quote unquote should. And again, it's easy to be like, well, you shouldn't be working that much. You're a burnout coach. But I'm a burnout coach, and the way I think about it is I think about all of the other things that we do, all the other ways that we spend our time, and the ways that those help us stave off stress and burnout. And that's really what I want to talk about in this video, about some of the things that I do that help me do that, despite the fact that I'm pretty consistently putting in 60-hour weeks. So the first thing that I want to talk about here is the first big thing that I do, which is the fact that I prioritize moving throughout the day. I make it a priority to move over the course of my day, to the point where when I'm habit tracking, I'm not necessarily tracking, my workouts. I am tracking what I call daily movement. Even if the only movement I'm doing over the course of the day is a little bit of yoga or going for a walk, I count that. That is daily movement to me. And the reason why that's so important is moving our bodies helps us to process stress. We actually need a little bit of stress to help us process the negative toxic stress in our body. And so some of the ways in which I do that is recently, over the last month or so, I have been really prioritizing getting in a morning walk. And this morning walk is not long, and the intention behind it is not to exercise. The intention behind it is literally to help set my circadian rhythm and expose myself to sun early in the morning, usually within the first hour to hour and a half of my day. And the second part of it's just to wake up my body. So it's literally 10, 15, 20, usually max 30 minutes of a walk, and it's not meant to be an aggressive walk. It's not exercise. It's just to wake myself up. I've also, and this is a very new development, I actually got a walking pad about 5 days ago now. Basically just like a mini treadmill that goes underneath my desk when I stand my desk up. And that has been another big way that I've been getting in movement throughout the course of my day is, during the periods in my day where I don't have a lot of meetings, and I'm just doing emails or content creation or editing videos or something, I will set up my walking pad and I will walk very, very slowly as I work. And then the obvious side of that is the fact that I also do, focus on exercising. And lately I've been exercising in the afternoon to the evening because I've kind of been using it almost as a means to wrap up like any residual stress cycles that have happened over the course of my day. So that is one of the big things that I prioritize that I'm doing that I really feel like helps so much when it comes to helping stave off burnout, is the fact that I am moving throughout the day. I'm constantly processing the stress that is in my body, and I find that to be very, very important for not only helping me to release stress, but also for keeping my productivity high and my mood. The next big thing I do is I make time off a non-negotiable. And when I talk about this, I actually, in my How to Avoid Summer Burnout video, I talked about how I think it's so important to not necessarily focus on taking like one long vacation, but multiple short vacations. I do that, but probably the biggest way I approach taking time off is kind of how I approach my like time off week to week. So when you have, you know, essentially 2 jobs, multiple jobs, it's so easy to end up working 7 days a week, right? But I realized a long time ago, actually, when I was working with my friend who's a business coach, I realized that I have to require myself to take off time every single week. It is too easy for me to work all the time, and I know how stressed and overwhelmed and burned out I get when I do that. So how I do this is I try to take Saturday off every single week. Saturday is my typical day off, not only so I can like see my loved ones and spend time with people who also have Saturdays off, but also just to have that consistent time of the week when I am getting time off. Now, I will fully admit that Saturdays don't always happen. So in the off chance that I am not able to take Saturday off, I'll usually swap it in for taking Friday off. If I can't take Friday off even, then what is the absolute fundamental non-negotiable for me is the fact that I take 24 hours in a row off no matter what. Now, when those 24 hours start, that's the part that might change. So let's say maybe I end work early on Thursday, and so I'll make sure if I can't take, you know, Friday or Saturday off, what I will do is I'll say, okay, you are not working from Thursday when you get off to Friday late afternoon. That's my 24 hours straight that I'm taking off. Maybe I have to get in a little work on Friday, so maybe it is I'm gonna take from Friday lunchtime to like Saturday lunchtime off, and then maybe I'll do a little bit of work in Saturday evening. But non-negotiably, there's gonna be 24 hours straight somewhere in there where I am gonna take 24 hours straight off. Doesn't matter where it starts, but that is 100% a non-negotiable. It is typically Saturdays, but if it's not Saturdays, that 24 hours is happening at some point in there. This just helps me make sure that I'm not overworking myself, that I'm making sure I'm taking time off to relax, that I'm making sure I'm taking time off to do things that I enjoy and that sound fun for me. That is how I kind of approach that non-negotiable part of my work week. Similar to this is another thing that I do. I prioritize and relish a day with no plans. This is something I know about myself. You know, contrary to what you might see on a video, I am very much an introvert. I recharge by spending time by myself, but most importantly, I find I'm able to recharge the most effectively, the most efficiently, when I know that I don't have to be anywhere. When I have a day or a weekend with no plans, I try my damnedest not to fill that time with anything. If something comes up spontaneously or I decide I want to do something spontaneously, awesome, great, that's wonderful. But I really intentionally try not to fill that time, because having days with no plans is like the ultimate in allowing myself to relax, to rest, to recharge. I know how much I need in my life and in my schedule days and, you know, times where I don't have to be anywhere. I can just do things when I want to do them, how I want to do them, and on the schedule that I want to do them. I also feel like this kind of relates to my freedom value a little bit, that part of how I get fulfillment and live according to my values is by creating freedom, moments of freedom in my life. And that is what having no plans really means to me. Again, it's not me saying I don't want to like hang out with people, but sometimes just having stuff locked into my calendar doesn't feel as good as being able to go with the flow and just kind of see what happens. I just need to have unstructured time to be able to do whatever the hell I want. And that I find is so important for me. It's not a work-life thing even at that point. For me, it's just an overscheduled thing. Your week can so easily get filled with appointments, and you're not even able to spend your work time the way you may not necessarily want to. So making sure I kind of balance that out with being unscheduled as much as possible on the weekends is a big way that I pour back into myself. The next thing I really do is I prioritize fundamental self-care activities. And this is one that I'm gonna keep really short because I don't wanna belabor this. We all know that we need self-care. We all know that we need to do all of these, laundry list of things to help make sure we're taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, and emotionally. I really focus on prioritizing those. Sleep, exercise, hydration, healthy eating as much as possible. I literally had blueberry pancakes this morning as I'm recording this. So like healthy, but like also not like overly strict. And really, this just boils down to the fact that it helps me to feel energized, it helps me to stay focused, and it helps me to reduce stress. These fundamental self-care activities, and I will prioritize certain of them in different seasons. So like right now, I feel like the one I'm really trying to prioritize, even though it isn't going particularly well, is sleep. I'll get to bed when I want to, but sometimes my body just rebels against me when it comes to actually getting good sleep. But yeah, I just know I need to take care of my body. That's really what it's about. And when I'm taking care of my body, I have more energy that I can pour into the different activities that I am doing. And that is really what allows me to work so much and not constantly feel drained by it. Last but not least in this, the last big thing I really want to touch on is that I have various sources of fulfillment in my life. This is really the final thing that I think allows me to work as much as I do without burning out. And this is really what spurred the entire idea. As I mentioned, I was having a conversation with a client earlier this week as I record this, and I happened to offhandedly make a comment that I have various sources of fulfillment in my life and how that is so helpful for me to be able to kind of be go, go, go all the time and not feel drained by it. And she asked me what I meant by that. So I told her, I was like, well, I get fulfillment from my day job. I get fulfillment from my business. I get fulfillment from hobbies. I get fulfillment from painting. I get fulfillment from reading. All of these things fulfill me in various different ways. And what I think is so crucial about having multiple sources of fulfillment in your life is if one of them starts to get crazy and overwhelming and stressful and frustrating, if that is your sole source of fulfillment in your life, that is going to become a source of emotional exhaustion. That is going to be draining. But if you can have multiple sources of fulfillment, that one thing being frustrating and discouraging isn't going to derail you nearly as much because you have multiple things that are pouring into you in that capacity. It's basically like one source of fulfillment can compensate for another when things aren't going particularly well there. So the fulfillment can come from all sorts of different places. It can be professional, it can be personal, it can be hobbies, it can be work, it can be anything. But it's about having things that pour back into you and having multiple of those things so that you're not just dependent on one source. That fulfillment piece is so important to me because fulfillment is one of my core values. I define fulfillment as regularly doing things that challenge me, grow me, and ensure that everything I am doing pours back into and grows myself. That's why fulfillment is such a fundamental thing for me, because it is really driving forward one of my ultimate core values. So whether it's about fulfillment for you or not, ultimately it's going to be about knowing what your core values are and really making sure you're pouring time and effort into things that help you abide that core value. And that is going to help stave off burnout, even if you're pouring in a lot of work hours. So in conclusion, I no longer equate long work hours with burnout. What I think it's really about is the ways that our work and the ways that we're spending our time outside of work pour back into us. My experience, these are some of the things that I find to not only pour back into me, but help me have the productivity, the focus, the energy, and the effectiveness to really make sure that not only am I able to work a lot, but I'm able to do so in a way that doesn't negatively impact me and that doesn't burn me out. So with that, that is it. That's all I've got for you today. I hope that this really resonated with you. I hope it gave you maybe some ideas, and I would love to know, go ahead and drop a comment below if you do something different than what I talked about in this video. Do you also move a lot? Do you also really focus on having various sources of fulfillment in your life? If you do, drop a comment below. Let's idea share so that we can all benefit from this in a really, really meaningful way. But with that, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, all of that, so that YouTube can keep sending these recommendations your way. Sometimes you might not see all of my videos because the algorithm really needs to know that you are liking a video you're watching. So that liking, subscribing, and commenting can really, really help with that. But once again, I appreciate you being here and I appreciate you being part of the Coach Ellen community. And with that, I will talk to you next time. Bye.